This is Jonathan Lane of Fan Film Factor, and today I'm here with Mr. Jeff Nord, who just created his first Star Trek fan film, Commanders of Starfleet, which was really an original idea. He wanted to create one of those 1940s Flash Gordon-esque serial adventures. It was basically Star Trek, but just, if it were done in the 1940s in all black and white and cheesy effects and starships that were hanging by wires. And, it was so much fun. It was so original. The first question, Jeff, is how did you come up with the idea of doing that?
I think the idea was with me for a while. It first came up around when Enterprise was canceled. So like 2005, I think is when that happened. And like there's that whole thing going on with that Romulan War movie that they wanted to do. And they said it was gonna be like, oh, it's gonna be like Band of Brothers and things like that. And I was like, that's a cool idea. And then I caught this black and white film, a black and white war movie on TV one night. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool if they did it like that, where it's like black and white and it looks like it came before the 60s, since technically, Enterprise was a prequel to the original series. So, it seemed like that would be a cool idea. So I kind of played around with that for a bit, and then I just kind of let it go and kind of did some other stuff. And then I came across the Flash Gordon serials. I kind of watched those. And I was like, these are so, they're cool in that cheesy way where they definitely kind of feel they're epic and kind of feel futuristic, but at the same time it's like you see the wires on the models and everything's like poorly dubbed and whatnot. So I was like, well, if anyone's going to do like a prequel to Star Trek, to the original series, it'd be cool if we did it like it really came before the original series, like it was made in the 1940s or 30s. So that's really where it came from, where it's like I just thought it'd be a cool idea to do something that legitimately looked like it came before the original series, both in terms of production but also in terms of canon as well.
Well, I'll tell you, it was really cool. It was fun to watch. And now you've got some filmmaking chops. I actually went to your YouTube channel, and there was, I guess, like a half dozen different other films that you made.
Yeah.
Are you a filmmaker? Have you gone to film school or worked in the industry?
I didn't. Everything you see, I basically just I've always enjoyed film, the behind the scenes stuff. It's basically my favorite part of any back in the day when they did like DVD extras and whatnot, I'd watch those more than the actual movie. So it just everything was self-taught. So I basically just grabbed a camera at one point, learned how to write the scripts, and just I started shooting. And like I guess if you watch them, they start to they're pretty rough starting out, and then I think they get progressively better when you hit Commanders of Starfleet. So it's just it's they say the best way to learn how to do filmmaking is just to do that. Just grab a camera, find some actors, and just start filming.
Where did you go to look for your actors?
They're all LA based. That's where I am. There were some casting websites that I used back in the day. And basically 2 of the 3 actors I had for this project I've worked with before. And I think the cool thing about them is that they're both Star Trek fans. So it was kind of an easy sell. I was like, hey, I want to do like this 1940s style, like, black and white Star Trek thing where it's like, it's kind of cheesy, but like, we also take it kind of seriously. You're like, yeah, I'm in. So I'm like, cool, awesome. And then the guy who plays Romulan, I just threw up a casting notice for him, and he gave me the best audition for the part. So I was like, hey, you want to do this? He's like, yeah, I love Star Trek. I'm like, great. So yeah, it was definitely one of those things where like, I found actors that I know and trust, and also they like the product too.
Now, was it just the 4 of you out there, or did you have a sound person? Did you have a lighting person?
No, it was I had some people for the stuff in the tower. I had 2, well, I don't know if they're really assistants, but they're 2 people I worked with on projects before too. And I just asked if they kind of help out, maybe take some behind the scenes pictures, just so I have something to kind of show, and just mark off that where the actors need to be, and kind of move some stuff around. So that part I had some help, but otherwise everything else was all me. I just attached a mic to my camera, and I have a couple lights of my own, and we just kind of shot it.
What kind of camera were you using?
It's a Lumix G85. So yeah, it shoots the 4K, which is great for modern looking stuff, but you know, when you have to kind of like reduce it to looking like it came from the 1940s, it's one of those things where like, you know, you have this crisp digital footage and like you kind of have to make it look like it is not crisp digital footage. So
That's true. And how, you know, I don't think people realize probably how difficult it was to make something look cheap and
yeah,
cheesy.
yeah.
So how did you go about that? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different aspects to that, I'm sure.
The oh God, where do you want to start?
Wherever you want.
Wherever. Yeah, I think for the first part, like I knew I wanted to use physical models, so and you know, it's like anything with this across the board. I don't really have any experience or skills in making models. So what I did is I just went to a local hobby shop and I looked for stuff that looked retro, that, you know, kind of looked like it came from the 40s or 50s. And I just kind of bought up a whole bunch of model kits and then, you know, kind of did the classic kit bashing thing where I was like, well, you know, if I put these two together, it looks like a Romulan ship. And if I put these together, it kind of looks like a rocket ship with, you know, Star Trek style warp engines attached to it. So that's what I did. And then it was kind of a learning curve to try to figure out how to shoot that, because I didn't want to use green screen. I didn't use green screen for it. So what you see when the background, what it is, it's I had a long wooden board, and I would hang the models in front of it on wires, and I would just move the wooden board back and forth. And like I had like a sky backdrop I bought. I just taped it down to that, and I just moved it back and forth. So that's all you're seeing. It's the background moving with the ship shots.
So the camera's on a tripod and you're just holding it going like that?
Yep, that's it. Just did back and forth, just moved it back and forth a couple times until I felt like I got the shot. And then
no room through full of assistants or whatever, and you direct.
No, I seriously just set it up in my living room, and it's, you know, it's ironically that's also where the interior of the Starfleet ship was shot too, and that was about $100 worth of foam board and duct tape, and that's all that was. So, you know, and I think it works for this type of thing, but like, you know, if you're shooting 4K widescreen, it looks bad. And what's interesting too about that is that it only goes up about 4 feet, because like, again, there's no actual like, you know, experience with doing any of this. So like the higher up I made it, the more it would tip over, and like I couldn't get the panels to attach right. So the set only goes up about 4 feet, and you know, my actors are about, you know, the tallest is about 6 foot. So what you see for that interior shot is like they're sitting on my apartment floor for that. And I just have the tripod lower, so it looks like they're, you know, one of them standing, the other one sitting. So, you know, they showed up at my place, and I was like, okay, so here's the set. You have to look, and they kind of look at me weird. I'm like, trust me, it's gonna work. Just, you know, just bear with me. Do your job. It's gonna look great at the end.
And where was the tower part shot? Because that looked like a nicer,
that was
museum area or something.
Yeah, that was an actual set that I found in LA. There was
we have sets all over the place.
They're everywhere, and I mean that's the great thing. But you know, the other problem is that they get costly very fast. So for this one, I found it was in Van Nuys. It was like just a small studio where this brother and sister, they just set up something because they wanted to do something for indie filmmakers. It isn't going to cost an arm and a leg to do. So and yeah, what it is actually, it's actually a bank set, and I think you can kind of see it in one of the shots where like you kind of see like a bank vault in the background, and it was just kind of like, I don't know, it's an alien tower, just pretend something, and it's also like, you know, 1940s, so I figured, you know, they're going to reuse sets, and they're just going to call it something else at that point. So that's what I did. And what was cool about that?
I was going to say, what, you know, one of the things that's great about doing it in that 1940s-esque way is you can film in pretty much any set, and nobody's going to question it, because back then that's what they did. You know, it's like, oh, it's a bank, but it's really the bridge of a starship or whatever.
Oh yeah. That was definitely, I mean, you know, that was the greatest thing about that. It was like, you know, everything I did, you know, between like the props and, you know, the sets and the costumes, I was just kind of like, you know, if it doesn't look great, that's probably better, because then it'll just kind of like sell the period a little bit more. So
yeah, it was just so much fun. And the stuff that was outdoors, I saw some Joshua trees in the background, so I know in the general location that you were. But did you go to not Joshua Tree National Park? Did you?
No, it was it's actually about 50 miles east of Lancaster. It was it was a rental. I basically found all these places through Gigster. So, you know, if you're looking for sets, I don't, it's not LA based. I think, you know, they'll offer anything from all over the States, at least as far as I know. And basically,
so wait a second. With all of the desert located, because I've been to Lancaster, it's basically the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's just left in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing out there once you get past, you know, where the actual town is. So you went to an actual set as opposed to just like, you know, wandering onto the desert somewhere and it's like, oh, we'll just film over here.
You know, one of the things I've learned about filming in LA is that trying to do guerrilla style, it's cheaper, but it's also riskier. Because there was for one other film I did where we shot at this park in Glendale. You know, I grabbed the actors at 7:30 in the morning on like a weekday because I figured nobody was going to be out, and it's like you get there and there's already like 10 people doing Tai Chi in a corner, and there's some guys hanging for birthday. So, you know, it's like, and I'm trying to like, you know, shoot this like serious scene between two actors. So, you know, between that, I was just kind of like, and the fact that too is like, I don't technically have permits to do this. So, you know, I have like two guys walking around with like their laser guns, but like, you know, from a distance, you never know what's going to happen. So, you know, I wanted to play it as safe as possible. So I was just like, I'm just going to rent some land from this guy, you know, it looks great, you know, for what I need to do. So I just, you know, shelled out the money for it, and, you know,
nobody called the cops on you. It's great.
Yeah, it was great. You know, it's like, and you also don't have to worry about like anyone just kind of like wandering into the area either, because, you know, it's technically private property too.
So this guy rents his land out for film shooting? Is that...
Yeah. When I scouted it before, a couple of weeks before we shot there, and yeah, there was already like, you know, things were like set up, like there was like this trailer and like this security guard for some other project. So, you know, it's like he definitely gets some business out there. So
now, I'm just out of curiosity, if you don't mind sharing, how much does it cost to rent a set for however long it was that you rented that piece of land?
The land was actually cheap. It was only about like $300 for about, I think I got it for 6 hours, and we were honestly out there only for probably like 3 hours. So, you know, I mean, that's a cool thing about, you know, basically just me and the camera and two actors is like, you know, if they know what they're doing and, you know, I know what I'm doing, it's, you know, we can knock that out pretty fast. So I think they were happy. I don't think anyone was, you know, too keen on the idea of spending 6 hours in the desert. So
it can get very hot in Lancaster.
It's, you know, we shot that in, I think, middle of March, so it was actually pretty cold, and it was really windy too. It's, you know, we definitely had to do ADR for that shot.
I was wondering about that because I heard some wind at some points, and
yeah,
I was just like, oh, yeah, if that was a windy day in the desert.
Yeah, it was yeah, the audio we shot there was, yeah, we couldn't use it. So I just, you know, I took him to my apartment at one point and just, you know, here's the footage I cut together, just, you know, match up the voices the best you can. And again, if it looks not great, that's even better. So
that's the 1940s way of doing it.
Yeah.
Look at that, I'm disappearing. Yeah, note to self, don't wear this Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, kind of blends in.
I thought I'd be different today, but oh well, go back to the nice black Star Trek shirts or whatever.
Yeah.
You film with them for, you know, a few hours out in the desert. You filmed in your home. You filmed in that other set that you rented with the bank set or whatever. So yeah. was it just 3 days of filming? Was that
it was, what was it, 1, 2, 3, 4, technically 4, because the stuff with the monster,
oh, there's monster too.
Yeah, again, that was just in my apartment. I had the guy who plays the male lead, his name is Reed Schmidt. He you know, he's a good friend, so obviously because he's in all of everything I've done. But I was like, if I make you dinner, will you just like throw on this monster costume, and, you know, I'll try not to laugh at you as you kind of, you know, do your monster thing. He's like, yeah, sure. So yeah, and again, the background for that was just $100 worth of foam board and duct tape. So, you know, and what I did for the windows is I just kind of drew in, I think it was like Word or something that kind of matched the windows in that bank set. So just so he can kind of get a sense of scale with everything. So, you know, just put the camera down low, and, you know, it's like, all right, do like scary monster moves and things like that. So technically 4 days of shooting with everyone.
And so for costuming, did you make those shirts yourself and put the patches on, or did you have somebody make them for you?
I did. The costumes, I went through like, I think 3 different versions of what I wanted to do, because it was one of those things where like I basically wanted everything to look like the only thing that could come after is the cage. Like if you pretended like this was actually made in the 1940s, like this would be like the influence for the Star Trek from the 60s. So I wanted to like, you know, between like the laser pistols and the costumes, I wanted everything to kind of look like it led up to that. But at the same time, you know, this is technically set during Enterprise, or around, you know, when Enterprise is coming out the air. So I wanted it to kind of look like it matched up with canon too. So the first version I had where it was basically what you see with the turtleneck sweaters, and like I had these great jumpsuits, but you know, they didn't look right. And then like I tried doing like these I thought it'd be cool to like kind of make it look more like fighter pilots. So like, you know, I bought these aviator jackets, but you know, again, it didn't look right. So I just like, all right, we're just gonna do like the sweaters. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna print out like I just cut out like a cardboard delta where it's more like an arrow. So again, it kind of like, it doesn't look exactly like the Starfleet delta. It just kind of looks like something that would become it later on. And then I just found like these cheap patches too from Amazon, and I just glued them on and found some gold ribbons, just kind of attached around, look like rank braids. And I asked my actors, do you guys have black pants? They're like, yeah. I'm like, great. That saves me some money right there. So yeah, that's all that was.
The gift that Star Trek has given fans and fan films is black pants.
Yeah.
Everybody's got black pants. And you decided to put the patches on the sleeves because that was more Enterprise.
Yeah, I figured, you know, again, I wanted it to look, you know, like the cage was the only thing that would come after, but at the same time, it's like, you know, I wanted to respect canon as much as possible. So I figured that was probably a good happy medium between the two of them.
Now, when you had to do your final editing and such, I noticed that you added little bits of film grain and little, you know, dropped scenes or what, not drop scenes, drop frames and stuff, like you know. So that was how did you put that in? Was there like, I don't know, did you like Premiere or After Effects?
I use I pretty much I did everything in Premiere. And you know, the thing with Premiere is that it costs you like $30 a month. So like I had to do this pretty fast. You know, so I didn't want to, you know, make this cost more money than it already was. But it was a pretty short film, so it didn't take that long. But yeah, what I did originally is I just cut all the footage together, like it was just, you know, normal. So like, you know, everything's like, you know, 16:9, and which kind of sucks because like, you know, that Starship set, like, you know, you cut it off at a certain point and you see my apartment. So I was kind of like, it'll look better once I crop it. Everything will be fine. But yeah, I for the grain pops, I found this overlay online, and basically I just dropped it in. And the bad thing about that is that it was nonstop. So what I had to do is I had to like go in and meticulously cut away at that overlay. So like it doesn't happen like every single frame. It's like, you know, it's here and there, because I figured that'd be like more realistic for the time period rather than just, you know, nonstop crazy. Yeah, and then at the end I just cropped off the sides to kind of make it look like it was more like 4:3, so like it looked like it was shot how they would shoot it.
That's cool. Now the only other thing that I wanted to ask you about in terms of production, I think we hit about everything, is the music. Did you have somebody compose that music, or did you just find some generic?
No, that was it was actually classical music. I think it was Franz Liszt. And what was cool about that is I was trying to figure out what kind of music they use for like Flash Gordon, and it was the same thing. They just used Franz Liszt. I mean, they didn't compose anything for that. They were just like, classical music, throw it in, it'll be great. So I just found some Franz Liszt music online and just dropped it in. And you know, the problem with, you know, not having someone compose it is like you have to sift through it and try to find stuff that matches with your footage. And that's kind of a challenge, and it can kind of take, honestly, the longest part of the entire editing process is trying to like match it to what you have. But I think it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it did. Well, I mean, there's certain places where, you know, it obviously cut out, but once again, you know, that's what happened in the 1940s as well. You know, just like suddenly the music stops and you're in a different scene because that's what they had to do back then.
Yeah. Like I said, you know, any technical errors, it's just, you know, that I think that kind of adds, you know, another element to the film.
So are you planning on making any more films like this one?
I'm not sure. I kind of, when I came up with the idea, I kind of felt like the best way to treat it would be as kind of like the unaired pilot to the unaired pilot to Star Trek. And it's kind of like the approach I had. And you know, I know it's serialized, and that was kind of like half the point. And I also couldn't think of an ending for it. So I was like, well, they're, you know, back in the day, they just did serials and then a cliffhanger. So I was like, well, that's how I'm going to end mine, you know, on that. So, you know, it's one of those things where, like, you know, if there's an audience for it, yeah, you know, I mean, like, I'm not opposed to it. You know, the actors had a great time. It's probably the most fun I've ever had on a shoot. So, you know, and I still have all the props and models. So, you know, it's like, I got to do something with these guys at some point. So, yeah.
What made this one so much more fun than your Cops and Robbers ones?
I think well, I mean, one is a lot more lighthearted. You know, the other films I had, you know, they get kind of dour, you know, and it was one of those things where, like, I finished the one before this, and, you know, I was like, I am kind of, you know, like, it's definitely more my thing, but, you know, I kind of want to break from, you know, the super serious dramatic stuff. And I was like, well, I want to do the Star Trek film for a long time. So, like, this is probably the best time to do it. And I think just because, like, you know, everyone there was a fan of it, you know, they all like Star Trek, and, you know, suddenly they're in costumes and running around with like laser beams and, or not laser beams with laser guns. So, like, they're all, everyone's having a good time, and, you know, so I think it was just more fun to do than, you know, some unknown project that, you know, where everyone has to be super serious all the time.
Have people generally been positive in their feedback to you, or have they been like, hey man, this thing sucks, it's black and white, you crop the frame?
There's, yeah, I looked at some of the YouTube comments, and, you know, there's a couple that are like, ah, this is black and white, it should be in color. Like, why did you do your own thing? And I'm like, well, I wanted to do this. This was what I wanted to, you know, it's just, yeah, it's like, I want to do this. And, you know, but I think, no, for the most part, like, it's been overwhelmingly positive. And, you know, even my friends are like, oh, this is the best movie you ever made. I'm like, what about the other ones I made? They're like, ah, don't worry about those. I'm like, okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting backhanded compliment, is
Yeah, it's like, yeah, your other stuff is okay, but, like, this Star Trek fan film, this is good stuff. So,
and my favorite backhanded compliment is, wow, you look so different today, you look good.
yeah, right.
So when you're not making films, what do you do for a living?
I work in one of the studios. I don't know if I should say which one.
Okay.
If I don't know how much that matters to anyone, but I kind of work in the administrative side, where it's, you know, it's a lot of looking at Excel and paperwork and stuff and things
I
like
think you
that.
are
So,
allowed to mention which studio you work for, unless you're doing some top secret work for them. But
all right, well, it's Warner Brothers. I work at Warner Brothers on
okay, well then.
kind of the financial side of things. So, yeah, it's, you know, it's the entertainment business. It's just kind of the not as creative side of it, but, you know,
It has to happen. You know,
yeah,
that's most of filmmaking is the money behind making the films, the fun
yeah,
stuff. Only a very few people get to do the fun stuff.
true, true, yeah, yeah. Whatever pays for it is kind of the important part. So,
Of course, you're doing the fun stuff yourself, but you're probably also paying for it yourself.
yeah, it was one of those things where, like, I thought about crowdfunding, and, you know, I started thinking about, like, how I would go about that, and I was like, well, I'll just make, like, a sizzle reel where, you know, we kind of show what I want to do for the project. But then I was saying, well, if I have to build everything for a sizzle reel, I might as well just shoot the entire thing myself anyway. So at that point, I was just kind of like, you know, I have the money. It's not that much. You know, I can get the actors for relatively cheap, or, and, you know, all the sets and stuff for cheap. So I just threw it on a credit card and called it good. So, you know,
Well, that is cool. Now, are you an aficionado of other Star Trek fan films? Have you watched what's out there, or did you just
I
kind of wander into this?
no, I really liked, back in the day, like early 2000s, when I was like, I don't know, probably like 12 or 13 or something, like, Hidden Frontier. I think it was like my first foray into it. And, like, you know, I think that was kind of like the time when, like, you really started seeing fan films, because, like, now the technology was kind of like, you know, you could buy it for your own computer. So, like, you start seeing, like, Star Wars fan films and Star Trek, and I think there's, like, some, like, DC and, like, Marvel stuff out there too. But yeah, Hidden Frontier was kind of like my first foray into it. Like, I really like what those guys did, and, you know, because it wasn't, you know, it was like their own approach to it. Like, you know, they had their own characters. They brought back some other characters from the other shows, and, you know, I everything was green screen, which, you know, obviously I wouldn't do for mine, but I
Completely
thought,
green screen.
yeah, and I thought, and the cool thing about that was, like, watching it get better, you know, because, you know, kind of, you watch those first couple of seasons, and, like, everything is, like, so rough around the edges, and then, like, you know, it starts to smooth out. Like, you know, the acting gets better, the sets get better, you know, everything was just better, and I thought that was probably my favorite part of watching that. And then I really liked Exeter too. I think that was around the same time and that was kind of the another inspiration for this, because they use practical models too for at least the first one. I don't know if they did it for the second one.
Not for the second one, no.
Not for the second one.
But
Okay.
yeah, but the first one, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was cool. And like, and you know, it was kind of like this, where like, you know, everything's kind of like, you know, the effects are kind of off, and like the acting's kind of off, and like the sets are kind of, you know, cheesy looking, but you know, that kind of has its charm of looking like it came from the '60s too. So
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. Now the difference between the first Exeter, which was the Savage Empire, and the second Exeter, which was the Tresorian Insurrection, I believe was the title of it. It was day and night, because they didn't even have a lot of practical sets to film on. So their bridge was pretty much just a green screen with somebody shooting against a background of it. And then they actually built the bridge set for the second one. That was the bridge set ultimately became the bridge set for Starbase Studios when they rescued it years later from a barn in Austin, Texas. Moved it to Oklahoma. So what about the more recent Star Trek fan film stuff? Do you still watch the stuff out there now?
Yeah, there was one. I can't remember the name of it. It'll come to me.
I can help you with that. I have a fan film factor.
That's true. You are the guy to ask. It was I really love the plot to it. It was where this Starfleet officer, like every couple of years, like he keeps revisiting this planet, and like his memory gets wiped.
Pursuit of a Dream.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
See?
Yeah, I thought that was, there you go. Perfect.
Use me. I know these things. Yes, Nick Cook and Samuel Cockings, both from the UK. Yeah, Pursuit of a Dream was awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good story, and like, you know, I really love, even with my own work, it's just kind of like playing with the concept of time. So I thought that was a really cool take on it, especially with the aging that they did too, which the
de-aging, yeah.
Yeah, and that was all digital too. Like they just did.
Yeah. The Luke Skywalker de-aging, yeah.
Yeah.
I joked if they really wanted to de-age Nick, they should have taken a little bit of fake hair and sprayed the bald spot of the black there. But,
the classic way of doing it, just like lay on makeup and just throw on a wig, and there you go. But yeah, I thought that was definitely probably my favorite of the more recent stuff that's come out there. And then
speaking of Nick and Sam, by the way, I'm gonna put up a picture right now. This was a shot of a shoot that they just had for Convergence. Finally, after 4 or 5 years of delays, Sam finally has started the production of this multi-mega crossover fan film. And I like to call this the Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger twins shot. Anyway, that is Marcus Churchill and Nick Cook in the photo. And apparently, I guess there will be some time travel involved in this. But anyway, we've been really looking forward to Convergence. So now it is finally getting shot. So, hats off to Mr. Cockings, the wizard of speed and time and fan film CGI. And of course, Nick Cook, who has been doing Starship Intrepid since before your grandfather was in diapers. So anyway, let's wrap it up with you then, Jeff. And so is there anything else interesting about the production of this film that you really want to share with the folks watching?
I think the model work was probably just my favorite part of the entire process, just because it's like I have one like right here where like, this will be
cool.
for, so it's there. It's not something you see much of in fan films or otherwise nowadays. So I just, I think that was probably my favorite part of the entire shoot, was just rolling that background back and forth on, having models and wires. And it's kind of funny because one of my friends watched it and she was like, "Oh, I could see a wire." I'm like, "You're supposed to. That's the point."
Yeah,
is to kind of see like the nooks and crannies of things, and it's not supposed to look perfect. But yeah, I between that and like the props and everything, I just I really like working on the aesthetic for this project too. And I think the actors loved it too. Once they were finally walking around in uniforms with laser pistols and communicators that were technically walkie-talkies from like the 70s and stuff, but like I was like, it's close enough. So
it really is. I was actually going to ask you about those wires, but you answered it already. But because I wasn't sure if you had done green screen or not, but if you had not, used wires and you had to add them in later, I was going to ask you, how did you add the wires that make them look so realistic?
Yeah.
But you used an actual model being hung by wires, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, that was it's, I think I threw up a couple behind the scenes pics on Facebook, on different Facebook fan film groups. But yeah, it's like if you go wider out, like it's so crude looking. It's like I had my kitchen chairs for my for my dinner table, and some guy, because there's a back alley across from my place, and someone just left a couple fishing poles there, and I was like, I need those. So I laid the fishing poles across the chairs, and again, it's just I had rolls of duct tape, so I taped the wires to it and hung the models, and they only fell off a couple times, and then it's like they break in a couple pieces, and it's just like, okay, and I have to glue them back together and wait for the glue to dry, and then we can like reset everything and start over. So, but yeah, it's definitely like the behind the scenes process is just like everything is just like so messy looking, but I think it worked out.
Oh, it worked out perfectly. Dumpster diving and
Yeah.
dime store filmmaking.
Yeah.
Guerrilla stuff the entire way. And
Oh, yeah.
that's the fun thing about fan films is there's no rules. You can do this any way you want to. So anyway, but
sure.
Congratulations,
thank you.
You knocked this one out of the park, for your first time out. And you can use this if you decide to make another one. You can crowdfund and say, hey, I made this one.
Definitely,
Looks really, really cheap and really, really cheesy. And if you want cheap and cheesy, give me your money and I'll do it again.
Yeah, I think if there was a second one, it would be cool to do just like something like with the bigger space battles, like maybe throw some like Daedalus class starships in there or something, just to kind of like tie things more together. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for your time today, Jeff.
Thank you.
And best of luck in whatever your next film or fan film is.
All right, thank you so much.